Hello, all, and welcome to Fun FTC. I'm Abbas, and with me tonight we have Peyton and Ethan. Tonight we'll be discussing AndyMark's thoughts on the game, what went into making it, and how they think it'll turn out, as well as some new products that they have coming up. Peyton and Ethan, before we get started, can you both introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at AndyMark? Peyton, if you want to start us off.
So my name is Peyton. I've been at AndyMark for about a year and a half now, and I'm pretty much a mechanical engineer that deals mostly with FTC product design.
I'm Ethan. I'm a mechanical engineer at AndyMark. Started about a year ago. I work both in FRC and in FTC, but FTC mostly on the game design.
Got it. And, just talking a little bit about how large the AndyMark team is, can you provide us with some numbers on that? How many engineers you guys have working and all of that stuff?
At a given time, we have about 4 engineers in the mechanical department and 2 in the electrical department. And overall, the company is approximately about 45 employees.
Got it. Okay, so, CenterStage just got released. I guess the first obvious question with the whole AMA is just what are your guys' thoughts on the game overall? So, let's hear it.
I mean, I think what stands out to me about this game is how different it is from the last one. Like, just on the scale of the elements in the field. And sort of last year, a lot of it was like a lot of the same assemblies at different heights and different positions on the field, and sort of dense. This year's game is like, it's really big structures, really large scoring area, but also sort of still requires you to be sort of narrow to get through that truss structure. So sort of some of the same challenges, but with the added height challenge, and just sort of an overall different feel from the game as a whole, I think.
Yeah, I think overall the fact that it's got so many different things that you can do make it a great opportunity for teams to like figure out maybe 1 or 2 tasks and get really good at them, versus some years where it's kind of a requirement that you're really good at like everything.
Yeah, and I talked a little bit about the game when it came out on Saturday night on our show, but I'll give some of my thoughts as well. I'm a huge fan. I think it's really interesting how it has like so many different elements of past games, but it's still so unique at the same time. You have the hang that's very similar to Rover Ruckus. Obviously, the parallels to Skystone everyone can see, and then the mosaics are kind of like relic recovery, and the drone shooting is kind of like ultimate goal. So it's like it's a really nice mix of past games, but still very, very unique. And I think all the different things that have come out in the past couple of years will really make this a fantastic challenge. So the next question I wanted to ask you guys was, could you explain to the audience like how your guys' relationship works with First for manufacturing these games? Like what input do you guys give into the games? When do you see the game or start manufacturing parts for it? Is it like a really, really tight timeline, or is it able to be managed pretty well? Let's hear all of it.
Yeah, so I don't want to get like into too deep specifics about the timeline of how this works, but it's a year-long project. Like we're still, very much building, assembling, and shipping out this year's field, and at some point we'll start working on next year's field with First. First, very much in the same way that teams are sort of customers to First in this game. We are like First is our customer when we're assembling these things. So they have requirements for what they want the game to be. They have a vision that they want us to bring to life. And so we as engineers are taking in their feedback, pushing back on things that maybe we can't build cheaply or construct in a certain way that they had planned, and really working together as a partnership to create these games for you guys.
Mm-hmm. And is there like anything with this year's game, if you're allowed to say that, like they wanted to do it this way, but you guys are like, no, I think it'll be like way easier to manufacture if we do this, or like if we add this feature to it, or anything like that?
I think the truss was probably, or the rigging area is probably one of the bigger changes in terms of what it started off was a concept of some form of height limiter and potentially some other movement-based challenge. And so really that was kind of open-ended, and it could have been a lot of different things, and trying to figure out how to make a structure that could span the length of the field and provide all the things that were part of those requirements. I think the field team did a great job trying to figure out how to do that, and came out with something I think a lot of people like.
Yeah, I can't wait to see robots just trying to weave through, all of the supports or the trusses and making sure they're going under them and then hanging an end game and things like that. So my next question for you guys is, what is your favorite element / part of the game and why? So, Ethan, if you want to start us off with that.
I guess I can get really granular and like talk about like a specific part on the field, or I could talk about a challenge overall.
You can do both. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think like challenge wise, the challenge of the backdrop is really interesting to me. That it's not at a flat 90-degree angle. It's sort of at this tilt. Plus, it's sort of can flex and you can knock them off. But there's also this sort of plinko feature where they move around the board if you drop one in a place and they'll sort of bounce off the other ones.
Mhm.
It's to me a really interesting scoring challenge that I'm not sure I've seen an FTC game quite like this.
Yeah. And so, like as you mentioned, like with the whole Plinko challenge aspect of it, do you think we'll see a lot more teams just kind of pumping and dumping onto the backdrop, or will we see teams going for like a lot more precise placements, or some combination of the two?
I think we're going to see a mix of this. I think the mosaic challenge that requires a sort of precision is very difficult to accomplish. Just with being able to place 3 and then not having another colored one touch
Yeah.
those turns out to be surprisingly difficult. Certainly when we were playtesting with our robots this year, I don't think we weren't getting mosaics consistently because like basically all the time we would drop an additional colored one in the spot or just wouldn't be able to get them to match up quite that way. So I think precision will be valuable to a subset of teams, but I kind of expect that teams are going to be trying to get as many pixels on the board as they can.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's kind of like Freight Frenzy where you had like the whole additional challenge of keeping the align specific hub balanced, right? And some teams would really try to optimize their placements to make them even so you wouldn't tip it over. But other teams, if it tipped over on the first element that you put on there, it did not matter to them. It wasn't something they tried spending time to correct later. So we'll see. We'll see how the game evolves. I'm sure different strategies will come out. Peyton?
Yeah, I think the height limiter features on the field are probably the thing I'm most excited about. I've said for years that FTC teams are crazy in their ability to optimize for the most dense cube they could possibly ever make. And so by cutting the height even farther down makes it like incredibly challenging to be able to reach all the way up to potentially the third line, but still be able to go under the bars or even under the gate. I think this would be really crazy to see these like expanding, transforming robots in the middle of gameplay. And so that's, I think, the part of the field that I'm most excited about.
Yeah, definitely. And, just to our audience out here, I'm asking a ton of questions, but if you guys have any, we are more than happy to ask them. It's an AMA with AndyMark. So please drop your questions in the chat. We'll get through them throughout the show. But following up on that, I think, Ethan, you said you also had an aspect of the game that was like really granular. So, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so some of the parts in the field, they go through so many revisions and like you'll get, as an engineer, particularly attached to one thing or another thing. I think the thing I'm most attached to are probably these guys, which are the T-clamps that hold the gate together.
Okay.
These went through 30 or something revisions and we're printing them and getting ready to make the mold thing. And it's, so many hours spent just getting these just right so that they work.
Yeah.
I really love these parts. These are some of my first plastic parts I've ever made, and I think they came out really well. I really love them.
Yeah. And, just talking about that a little bit, you mentioned like the mold making and stuff. So is a lot of are all of the plastic components just like plastic injection molded, or do they go through a different manufacturing process? Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so the T-clamps that hold the gate together and the C-clamps that hold the rigging onto the truss structure, as well as the pixels are all plastic injection molded.
Mm-hmm.
But we have other plastic parts in the field like the height restrictor bars and the rigging itself. Those are plastic extrusion. So a variety of methods here, but the most complicated ones tend to be the plastic injection.
Yeah, and what about the pixels?
The pixels are plastic injection molded.
Okay, got it. Yeah, no, that's really cool. So I guess the next question I had is, if you guys could change something about the game, what would it be? And, of course, why?
I think overall so in our initial testing, we found that the angle of the backdrop was pretty good. Um, and I think I think our first prototype was a whiteboard with some lines drawn on it, and then a couple of 3D printed pixels. So it was like pretty low resolution everything, but the angle seemed to work pretty good about not letting things fall. I would love to see something on. I kind of like the Plinko idea, so I would love to see like a 3D feature on the backdrop to kind of spice it up a little bit. But overall, I think it turned out nicely.
Yeah. And Ethan?
I think if I had to change one thing, there was a moment in development when the height restrictor bars had there were two on each side, so like one I would have one right next to the other one, and it looked really cool and it was a lot easier to set up. But sort of design led to not having those anymore. So like I sort of missed the look of the field when it had those. I'm not super cut up about it, but I do miss them.
Yeah, and I guess another thing, we can take some audience questions now. So Blitz Team 2470 said, I saw some limited edition Peyton stickers at an event this year. They were super cool. Is AndyMark giving those stickers out?
No.
Okay.
Peyton does not like these stickers, but we here in the office, we love these stickers, and we'll put them on everything, and we'll give them to everyone. I have one on my desk over there, but it's probably hard to see. It's like really close in.
No paparazzi.
Yeah, I have one on my.
Oh, there's multiple.
I think this is the cool Peyton sticker. Yeah. I think there's one more. And who knows? The people that usually make them are fast at finding the worst photos of me to make the stickers.
All right. So, and then Random Falcon asks, why is the tolerance plus minus 1 inch? No, that's always a big point of discussion amongst teams every year. So,
I don't think that's changed from any given year. I think kind of the understanding on field assembly is you've got a bunch of volunteers that likely may be relatively new, or maybe it's like a league event where you're trying to get the whole event done in a shorter amount of time. So I think overall, this might be carryover from back when teams had to build their own fields from scratch. But overall, I think it lends itself to making sure that everything is within spec for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Okay, and then we'll ask some of the more robot specific questions in a little bit. But Riverish said, would AndyMark engineers ever consider privately building robots to compete after all the competitions have ended for us to see how they would play it?
I mean, I think we sort of do this in that certainly this year we have a robot starter robot. So we had robots that we built here to playtest this game. Most of them aren't ever going to see the world. But, we tend to have a very different design strategy when we make those robots than a team in a season would have. When we build something like the robot starter robot, it's for a team that's either just starting out or just getting a kit, that sort of thing. So generally when we make robots for these games, we're not trying to master every challenge all at once. And as an engineer, of course, we want to do that. But we don't really get around to doing that. We have a bunch of other projects to be working on.
Yep. Yeah, and I guess kind of building on that, you guys see the game like very early, or much before the game comes out, you guys see it, and so you spend a lot of time with one game at a time. By the time Worlds comes around and you see those finals match 1, finals match 2, finals 3, looking at those robots, are those things like you think like, yeah, I could have seen something like that coming up from the beginning of the season, or is it just like, wow, how did a team come up with something like that?
I think Worlds this year was probably the biggest shock to me, just because it's not that the robots were any different than I would have really expected. It's just that the gameplay is so advanced And with such a strategic game like Power Play, seeing kind of the like you make a move then I'll make a move strategy was a lot different than what I think we were expecting early on, where everybody's constantly on the move trying to fill the whole field. So I think overall Worlds is usually more the kind of play we expect out of everything, and usually by a state level we kind of see it at around the country. So Worlds is just another level sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. And so I'm going to preface this question by saying, we are not official referees. Please read the game manuals and the documentation. But Jeffrey Friedhofer asked, what restricts the size and weight for the drone? I could not find it in the books. How did you come up with these?
So I don't know. I'm not even sure Peyton knows this. I mean, we don't write the rule book, so I don't know where those rules would be located. I don't recall anything from development that would point me towards a certain direction there.
Yeah, I think overall, because the drone didn't require any AndyMark provided things besides the tape for the tape lines, it wasn't necessarily something that we had a whole lot of focus on or direct input on, just because there wasn't a need for us to make anything for it.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up the drone a little bit later, but since we're already on that topic of conversation, I guess I'll ask you guys. So with the drone, did you guys try like any strategies or any mechanisms to get it to land in zone 1? Because I think that'll really be a pretty tough challenge for teams to figure out how to do very consistently. And so I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are on it.
I'll say Ethan's made more drone related stuff in the office than I have.
So like when we found out what the drone challenge was going to be a part of the game, since it wasn't something that we were making like on the field, like we weren't making parts for, it was really just the tape. I don't we didn't focus on it super hard. We certainly built drone mechanisms. I made one in the office that people would put safety glasses on whenever I would fire it. Just like as a joke, like, oh my God, it's so dangerous. But it, trying to make drone mechanisms out of like robots or something. I think really what we found is just like the higher the arc, the better chance you have of getting in that zone 1. So it's like straight up and down versus trying to like go at a flat and then down.
Yeah.
But anything beyond that, we didn't really pursue.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, so just a couple more. I wanted to talk a little bit more about robots this year and how you guys think they'll turn out. So, what do you think will be like a really popular style of robot? I mentioned on the stream on Saturday night there could definitely be some sort of a feeder stacker meta like there was in Skystone, or we could maybe see some extending intakes for teams who really want to get crazy with it. But what things do you think we'll see that are very common amongst teams this year?
I think kind of something similar to what the Kraken Pinion team put out, where you have more of an angled slide with a pickup that kind of feeds it to that angled slide and then a deposit off the backside. We had a couple of test units in-house that did something kind of similar. But overall, I think something that requires you to be able to hold 2 game pieces and easily pass them over your robot is probably going to be pretty popular this year, kind of how it was last year.
Yeah. And, do you guys see any use? Do you think turrets will be big this year? They weren't huge last year. I mean, some teams definitely did have a lot of success with them, up a creek, namely. But, do you think we'll see a comeback for those this year or not really?
I don't know. I wasn't expecting a whole lot of them last year, and I think last year lended itself more to a turret design. Mm-hmm. We'll see. I think the field is a little less cluttered this year than previous years, so I think that gives teams a little bit more space to maneuver around and probably not have many issues versus such a dense field from last year.
Yeah. And Ethan, so, this is the first time we've had a hang in a long time. I think the last hang game we had was Rover Ruckus, which was now maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So it's definitely been a while. Nobody who competed in that is competing anymore. How do you think teams will fare with it? How do you think they'll approach it? FRC has obviously had a hang or two since that time. So there's some resources to look at there. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the hanging aspect of the game?
I mean, I tend to think of like for FRC, climbing is sort of a classic challenge. It's in a lot of games. It's very flashy. It looks super cool. I think having it have been a while since teams in FTC have climbed, there aren't like products specifically designed to do this, and people just aren't quite used to that. But I think overall, it's a pretty easy climb, just with a simple bar that you can hook onto and climb straight up. I think it's not the hardest climbing challenge we could have gone with. So I think a lot of teams will find success with it. But there's that newness of it that could scare some people off even away from doing it.
Yeah. Peyton, any thoughts on that? Anything to add?
Yeah, I think the climbing bar overall is really exciting. Kind of similar to Rover Ruckus, there's a large point value associated with it. So overall, I think it would be a pretty good idea to at least take a look to see how feasible it might be for your team. But I like hanging games. We haven't seen them a whole lot in FRC or FTC. We see them kind of a lot in FRC. So I think it's a good thing for the community to try something a little different.
Yeah, and so kind of related to this, Peter Stevens says, did a version of this game exist where 4 robots could hang in endgame? So this year, 4 robots can hang, just each on a different structure. Maybe they met like all on the same structure, like the same rig or something like that.
I don't think we had a design at any point that would have been all 4 on the same structure. I think it was always aligned specific bars. I think we had designs where 2 robots were on the same bar, but it wasn't. I don't think from our end. I don't think that was ever a concept that we had developed beyond a drawing.
Sure. And last thing I want to talk about before we get into the new products you guys have had since the end of Power Play is with the angle of the backdrop. Do you think 60 degrees, from the horizontal is really the way to go for linear slides, or will we see some teams running like a vertical set of linear slides and then a horizontal set?
I would love to see it. I think one of the tricky parts about this year's game is being the height restrictor. So you're going to try to package the most amount of linear travel, and generally speaking, you're going to want to put that at a diagonal to maximize the space to fit under that 14-inch bar, if that's your goal.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about some new products. One product that's been released since last season that I'm really excited to talk about personally are the new programmable servos. More servo options are just always great for teams. So first, can you guys talk a little bit about them, and then we'll go into like some uses for them this season?
Yeah. We have a couple on our starter bot here. So overall, they're for the most part the same size as a standard size servo. We opted for integrating the mounting tabs on it. So they have integrated mounting, so they fit directly to structure. So you don't need additional hardware or components like that to fasten it. One of the new features, they have an integrated hex output, which makes them great for directly driving things. We've seen over the years, splines are both harder to manufacture, and they strip out a fair bit under load. So far, we're very excited with the 5mm hex output, and then we've got a couple of different adapter products on the web for switching for 3/8 hex or 1/2-inch hex is coming, and we'll probably likely have some other ones down the road.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And so, Ethan, where are some instances you think we'll really see these servos used heavily this season?
I mean, I think these servos are I really like what I've seen from these, using them on our robots here with robots, in terms of the power available to them. I think they are just that little bit of an edge over what's currently on the market. So we've used them on things like intakes to pick up the pixels, like on the Robot Starter Bot. I've seen that a couple of times. I don't think I've seen them in a high torque application yet, but I can certainly see that being a use case of them. So maybe
Right.
not an arm, but something short.
Sure. And I guess one of the biggest releases that I've seen on AndyMark's end in a while is the whole Robots build system, right? So there's a lot going on with it. Do you guys want to just walk us through it at a higher level first, then we can dig into it a little bit?
Yeah, so Robots has kind of been my baby over the last about year or so. And so really just having a build system that kind of just makes sense has been at the forefront. So the original idea and like push for Robots, we have a friend up in Michigan called Allison that had this idea of a tube-based system with a very simple hole pattern, and they test ran a real alpha version of this the last couple of seasons up in Michigan, and fairly great success. Had a decent number qualify for state, and we saw kind of the mission behind it is less about making everything hyper focused on being able to do everything all on one piece and kind of breaking things out so it's understandable and accessible for people. So one of the big things is it uses slightly larger hardware than we've used in the past, mostly because it's just easier for people with lower motor skills or less defined motor skills to be able to accurately put things together. Other things such as it only has a very simple hole pattern on the sides of each face, which makes it really easy to understand how things are supposed to go together, because the one hole can line up with the other hole, or you can rotate it, and that's kind of it. And then we can use other components to try to make things a little bit more advanced. And I think overall our kit is, in my opinion, a little biased, really well put together. There's a lot of components in it that allow you to bake something as crazy as the linkage robot that's on the screen, or even the starter butt we put out for this season, and then still have a lot more pieces left over for you to make all sorts of different additions and mechanisms for your robot.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I'm really excited to see how teams use it. And so, Guinea Week asked, I know you guys picked Imperial units for robots for FRC compatibility. What sorts of situations could you see that come into play versus compatibility with the metric system?
So I think the usability certainly in FRC is great. Like already, at least on my FRC team, we're using Robots parts to make smaller mechanisms. Like this half-inch tube is like really a useful utility to build with. I mean, I think choosing Imperial versus metric is a contentious point among people, especially in the FTC community with so many metric systems. But it's also, it's a nice thing to be different about. This is a system that if you're an FTC team that wants to move into FRC, you've been using the same hardware through your entire robotics journey, that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about more robots kits and products coming out. But another thing I want to talk about right now is the pass-through gearbox. I think you guys mentioned that that's something you're looking to release soon. So, if you could show that off, talk about it a little bit. I haven't seen it super closely, but I'm very excited to hear about it.
Yeah, so I think this is my favorite product for robots. And so the idea behind it is because it uses any length shaft that we carry for 3/8 hex, and the gearing is encapsulated inside the gearbox, the shaft can be an output opposite of the motor, or the output could be under the motor. And so this is really useful when you want to mount this over a tube and reduce a lot of the overall space you want to put on a mechanism. I've used these kind of all over the place on some different robot designs, where you could put a short piece on to drive a single mechanism, or you can run a long shaft all the way across to drive things on either side of your robot. And I think overall it's just a really neat packaging, and it's really expandable. If you use longer standoffs and hardware, this works as a really good gear reversing gearbox, where you can get two outputs that go in different directions. And so it's just really, I think, versatile in that manner.
Yeah, and what gear ratio is it, if you don't mind me asking?
So generally, it'll be a 1-to-1 on the gearbox portion itself, and then it's whatever Neverest compatible motor you want to put on it.
I see.
Currently, we offer the 4 ratios of that.
Sure. Nice. And then I guess another thing, this season, obviously with the backdrop, there are going to be some very, very fast lifts. And from my understanding, you guys are releasing another lift assembly. So can you show us some of the features? Let's talk about it a little bit. I know you guys released some stuff to work with drawer slides earlier recently, but this now works. This is different than that. So it's more with the robots side. So yeah, if you guys could talk about that, that'd be great.
Yeah. So sometimes our model is attached to a robot, but we'll be releasing a 1-stage version and a 2-stage version coming soon, and it uses ball bearings and a new double wide tube to create a multi-stage lift assembly. And in testing, it's incredibly smooth, and we think teams are going to like it because it's mostly just normal robots parts, which is kind of like the goal behind robots, is to make everything achievable with pretty much the basic building blocks. And so in this particular model, it shows it with the motor mounted in one orientation, but because robots has a classic hole pattern along the whole side, you can mount the motor in really a bunch of different orientations or locations, and it'll still just work.
Yeah, and so how fast do you see teams running this lift system?
So I think in general, I've run it with a 14-to-1. It would not surprise me based on the speeds that some teams are doing things to run like a 4-to-1 and be able to get a real zooping kind of like extension up, place the thing, retraction back, and they're gone before anybody blinks an eye.
And so is it string powered or belt or some other system? And if so, does like the pulley come with it?
Yeah, so in general, everything that'll come in it will be to make it a continuous rigged elevator system. There's a tension spring in there for the multi-stage versions to help with the string tension on the up and the down. And I've done some testing, and there's ways you can reconfigure it so that if you're running like a 1-stage, you can run that off of belts. And the belt-driven one is kind of neat because then you don't have to worry about restringing anything.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, yeah. And Ethan, I think it's been a little bit since we've heard from you. So are there any products that you're really excited to talk about? We'd love to hear about them.
I mean, I think the robot system as a whole it's very exciting to me to have this out in the market this year. I don't have like a specific product that I'm super excited about. Peyton is all things robots in our office. He can tell you anything you want to know about it. But the robots to me is about accessibility, and I think from what I've experienced working with FTC teams and certainly the middle school aged FTC teams, I think this kit is really going to help make a competitive experience more accessible to younger students and really just open that up. I mean, I'm really excited for robots.
Yeah, and we'll talk just a little bit more, or we're going to talk more about it. But before we do that, I wanted to start our giveaway. So Tyler, if you want to come on and talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to be giving away for our friends at AndyMark, actually. We have, imagine that, we have the driver station, actually. I'd love to hear a little bit more about this, Peyton and Ethan, if you don't mind. Whoever wants to grab this about the FTC driver station that you are selling and kind of what it is a little bit, and then we'll start the giveaway for it.
Yeah, so the driver station table is essentially made so that it fits the driver station that we also sell for FTC teams to carry around your driver station hub and your controllers. It really came from the knowledge that there wasn't a standardized product that you could get for your field, either at your practice space or even for competition. That was it works at exactly the right height as intended. Fits a product and okay, so we're giving the tray.
Oh, I'm sorry, my bad. Yep.
The tray is it's a downscaled FRC driver station tray, which I use on my FRC team. We have a bunch of these smaller ones floating around the office. It keeps everything organized for us. Certainly, if you have multiple driver stations and controllers, that sort of thing. Just it's a nice little tray, handles, nothing much more to say than that.
Awesome. Well, if you're interested in winning this, by the way, type in Robits in chat right now, ROBITS. Don't let your phone autocorrect you, by the way. That happens to me quite a bit during this. So, and don't forget, if you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, absolutely free to do, click the subscribe button. You get 3 times luck to win. If you do win, please make sure you send First Updates Now Tyler a message on Discord or admin at firstupdatesnow.com so you can claim that. We'll draw for that in just a little bit once we get through a few more questions and a couple more products to talk about as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, talking a little bit more about Robots. I saw you guys have the core kit, and then you have the lift assemblies. Are there any other expansion kits you guys are offering with the Robots system?
Yeah, so out right now should be the mobility one that I think flashed up on the screen. And so one of the core ideas behind the mobility kit is we understand that Mecanum is kind of king in FTC right now. And so what this offers is a couple of different ways of implementing Mecanum drive. So it heavily focuses the pass-through gearbox in a couple of different configurations, but also includes the normal open gearing method for a more of a simple build. And we fully intend for teams to be able to put this together in any number of different configurations, as well as maybe even mixing and matching between some of the different build styles, whether it's the through tube configuration, the over tube configuration, or the open gearing kind of configuration. In fact, I've mixed and matched on this one that I use around the office all the time. Because you can kind of just, with Robots, you can kind of just put everything in a different manner and everything just still kind of works because it's all on that easy to mount grid.
Yeah. Okay, and then Dragonov said, is using a rack and pinion system good for this season? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Rack and pinions are interesting. One of our FTC teams used one last year for the extending portion of their arm. One thing is, if you can find and make sure that, right, it's overall kind of hard, in my opinion, sometimes to find a rack and pinion that integrates well into the FTC build system. So being able to find something that's going to be able to be withstand potentially the weight of a robot if you're using it to climb might be an interesting thing. I usually see those in like a thin nylon kind of material. So if you can find something and integrate it in, you'll probably be fine. We'll see.
Yeah. And then Quinn McGinley, I really like this question. Was the backdrop being flimsy intentional or just a compromise, as in the risk of pixels falling off? First showed how hitting the backboard can allow those pixels to fall off during the game reveal, and it's definitely been a lot of discussion. So if you guys have any insight to that, I'm sure the community would love to hear it.
I think one of the first things that first came to us with early on last year was this idea that D-scoring would be like certainly easier than in past games. So I think that like flimsiness, part of it is the construction method that we used for the backdrop, but a part of it was like that first idea of like D-scoring could be this part of the challenge. So sort of half and half there. It's not a compromise necessarily, but it certainly was the direction we were leaning when we started developing it.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I guess another question I have is AndyMark looking to make any like advanced mobility or lift kits? I think swerve drives are coming up, and teams are always making faster and faster lifts. So anything like that, you guys are looking into for the future, or don't want to say anything just yet?
I mean, there's always the option to go more advanced. I think this particular season with the launch of Robots, there were a few components we knew the community would pretty much want from the get-go, and so we kind of focused our efforts on those. But there's definitely a lot of things that we still have coming down the pipeline that we're really excited to get to work on and release to the community. And so we'll likely see some form of advanced mobility in some form, or maybe even a faster, more compact linear slide like thing.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so we'll do 2 more questions. One from the audience. Anish said, why did you make the pass-through only one way? I believe they're talking about the stage door, not the pass-through gearbox, because that goes both ways.
So originally the stage door was able to sort of flip around backwards, so it would be 2 ways, but would always like stop you in one direction, but you could flip it to the other side and make the stoppage the other way. We found that like that just got way too confusing, and really just an extra level of difficulty to handle. So we limited its open angle so it doesn't cross all the way over the truss. I think that was just a part of the design that we worked on with first, and that's just how it was developed.
Sure, yeah. And I guess my last question for you guys is, if you could add like one new electronic device or hardware component to FTC that was like a legal, motor, actuator, sensor, what would it be? What would you guys want to add?
Something new. I think overall, it's really exciting to see kind of what the FRC community has had with like the limelight for the last few years, where it's just kind of been an easy to integrate and easy for teams that don't necessarily have the highest amount of programming knowledge to implement. So it'd be really cool to see all-in-one solution kind of like that for FTC. And I think this year where they've kind of opened up some of the rules on electronics, I'm hopeful to see in the future something kind of like that might be pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. Hopefully April tags this year can take a step in the right direction for that. Making autonomous navigation a lot more accessible for teams. So yeah, Ethan, anything you want to add on that?
I mean, I think Peyton and I are sort of on the same page there. I think I'm really excited about a potential for like a vision coprocessor, or like the April tags have been super useful in FRC. I think getting FTC robots a little bit more computational power to really get great localization for FTC robots could be really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I think that's going to wrap up our AMA about Center Stage. Really great questions and fantastic answers from you guys as well. So, please let us know in the fun Discord or comment on the YouTube video what you guys all think of Center Stage. And before we head out, Tyler, can you draw for a giveaway? And then also we have an announcement to make.
Yeah, let's do the announcement first real quick. Last chance to type Robots in for a chance to win the 18-inch driver station from AndyMark. We are going to be opening up, I've had a lot of people messaging us about this. We will be opening up applications for Fun FTC to be a host soon on our show. We are going to be very specifically looking for people who would like to go to events and interview teams, and to train those people to go and interview teams at events. We've done this with FRC. We have hosts all around the world now doing that. It's time for FTC to do the same thing as well too, and we'll be looking for a couple more on-air personalities, so please keep an eye out on our Discord at discord.gg/firstupdatesnow, and we'll announce in the FTC Discord as well too. But that will be I think it's early next week you'll see us be posting more about that. So if you're interested in making content with us, we'd love to have you. Go ahead and click that link once it comes out, and see if you're a great fit. Join us here at Fun. We'd love to have you. So let's go ahead and draw for the giveaway once again from AndyMark for that 18-inch driver station tray. The winner of that is going to be Alex W. Alex W., congratulations. Please make sure you shoot First Updates Now Tyler a message on Discord, which is me, or if you could email admin@firstupdatesnow.com with all your information. And thanks again to AndyMark for the cool giveaway tonight too.
Yeah, all right. So thank you all for all the follows and subscriptions we received today. Don't forget that you can subscribe for free through Twitch streaming, and YouTube subscriptions are also free. So we hope you enjoyed this episode of FTC Live. And if you want to stay connected with what First Updates Now FTC is doing, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all with the handle @FunFTC, and join our Discord through the link in the chat. So on behalf of myself, Peyton, Ethan, and our producer Tyler working behind the scenes, I would like to thank you all for tuning in. Please keep an eye out for future new FTC content, like our Robot in 30 Hours ranking video coming up on YouTube, and our fun FTC host applications like Tyler just mentioned, as well as all the awesome live streams we're going to be having the rest of the Center Stage season. All right, that'll be all. Bye-bye.